My name is Olivia, I'm 26 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that family can hurt you in ways strangers never could. I didn't grow up with a mom who braided my hair or tucked me in at night. My mom left when I was 8 years old. She didn't die, she didn't disappear without a trace. She just decided that her new husband and his 2 kids mattered more than I did. She packed her things, told me I'd be better off with grandma, and walked out of my life like I was some old piece of furniture she didn't have room for anymore. So I grew up in my grandmother's little one-story house in Indiana. Don't get me wrong, Grandma loved me in her own way. She made sure I had food, clothes, and a roof over my head. But love from your grandmother isn't the same as love from your mom. At school, when kids talked about family vacations, birthday parties, or their moms cheering for them at soccer games, I'd fake a smile and say, "Yeah, my mom's busy but she sends me gifts sometimes." That was a lie. My mom barely called, and when she did, it was short and awkward, like I was a distant cousin she didn't know how to talk to. I felt like an outsider, not just at school, but in my own skin. Every time I looked in the mirror, I wondered if I was too much like my mom or not enough like her. Grandma would say, "Don't worry about her, Liv. You're better off." But deep down, I always carried that question, why wasn't I enough for her to stay? Then, when I turned 24, something happened that turned my entire world upside down. After 16 years of absence, my mom showed up at my door, smiling like no time had passed. She hugged me, called me baby girl, and tried to talk about normal things, like she hadn't abandoned me, like we were just picking up where we left off. But I wasn't a child anymore. And behind her sugary tone and warm hugs, I could see it, something wasn't right. She hadn't come back just for me. She wanted something. And I was going to find out what. When my mom showed up that day, I swear my stomach dropped. She looked different, older, obviously, but still put together. Her hair was darker than I remembered, shoulder length and curled, and she wore this cream-colored coat that screamed money. She didn't look like the woman who left me behind in a cluttered 2-bedroom house all those years ago. She looked polished, almost like she wanted to make an impression. "Olivia, honey," she said, reaching for my hands. "You've grown into such a beautiful young woman." I froze. My instinct was to step back, but I didn't. Something about the way she said it, like she was trying too hard, made me suspicious. It felt rehearsed. We sat in my living room, and she started talking like we were strangers catching up. She asked about my job, about Grandma's health, about whether I was dating anyone. I gave short answers, because what I wanted to ask, "Where the hell have you been for 16 years?" was boiling on the tip of my tongue. Finally, I snapped. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice sharp. "After all this time, why now?" She blinked, then forced a smile. I missed you. I want to make things right." But I wasn't buying it. Not for a second. The woman who left me behind didn't suddenly grow a conscience 2 decades later. She wanted something. And the way her eyes kept darting to the pictures on my wall, the way she avoided talking about the past, it screamed hidden agenda. When she left that night, hugging me tighter than I wanted, she said she'd call me the next day to get dinner and really talk. As soon as the door shut, I sat on the couch staring at my phone. I didn't trust her. But I wasn't about to ignore her either. If she thought she could just waltz back into my life and use me for whatever reason, she was in for a rude awakening. This time, I wasn't the little girl she abandoned. This time, I had the power to decide how the story played out. And I was ready to find out exactly what she was hiding. The next day, I couldn't focus at work. I'm an assistant manager at a small insurance firm, and usually, my brain is stuck on spreadsheets and client calls, but not that day. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting it to be her. By lunchtime, I gave in and texted Grandma, "Guess who showed up last night?" It only took her 5 minutes to call me. "Don't tell me it was her," Grandma said, her voice tight. "Yep. She wants to make things right." Grandma sighed, a sound I knew too well. "Olivia, listen to me. Don't let her drag you into her mess. People don't just change overnight. She's up to something, and I don't trust her. That hit me. Grandma was never one to hold grudges. If anything, she was too forgiving. For her to speak like that told me all I needed to know. That night, my mom did call. She wanted to meet for dinner at a nice Italian restaurant downtown. The kind of place you don't just casually pick unless you're trying to impress someone. My guard went up even higher. At the restaurant, she was all smiles. She ordered wine, complimented the waiter, and kept trying to fill the silence with small talk. But the thing is, silence doesn't bother me anymore. I've learned to let it stretch until the other person gets uncomfortable. And it worked. Halfway through dinner, she cracked. "Olivia, I want to ask you for a favor," she finally said, lowering her voice. There it was. The truth beginning to slip out. "What kind of favor?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She hesitated, fiddling with her napkin. "It's complicated. But I really need your help." "I'll explain soon. Just promise me you'll hear me out." I nodded, but inside, my anger simmered. She had the nerve to leave me for years, then return only when she needed something? Fine. If she thought I'd roll over, she was wrong. I was going to play along, get the truth out of her, and make sure she regretted ever thinking she could use me again. She had no idea that I wasn't the little girl she left behind. This time, I was ready to fight back. I didn't sleep much that night. My mom's words kept circling in my head. "I really need your help." It wasn't just the words, it was the desperation in her tone. I'd seen enough people in tight spots to recognize the sound of someone backed into a corner. The next day, she texted me, "Can we meet tomorrow? I'll explain everything then." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with a simple "fine." I wasn't going to let her know how curious I was. But curiosity was eating me alive. That evening, I decided to do some digging. I remembered her new husband's name, Daniel. Back when I was a kid, he was the reason she left. He had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and she chose them over me. I pulled up my laptop, typed his name into Google, and within minutes, my suspicions grew. Daniel owned a construction company that had gone through a messy lawsuit a few years back: fraud, unpaid taxes, shady contracts. Nothing recent, but it made me wonder, was my mom tangled up in his mess now? When we finally met the next day, it wasn't at a restaurant. She asked me to come to her house. I hadn't seen where she lived since she left, so part of me wanted to say no. But I needed answers. The house was big, suburban, and painfully perfect. The kind of house you see in magazines, the kind I never had growing up. She ushered me inside, offering tea, acting like a hostess. I stayed standing. "Just tell me what this is about." Her smile wavered. She sat down on the couch, clasping her hands like she was about to pray. "Olivia, I need you to testify for me." I froze. "Testify? For what?" Her eyes watered, but I didn't buy it. "Daniel is in trouble. Some old business partners are dragging me into it, accusing me of things I didn't do. I need you to stand up for me, to tell the court I'm a good mother, that I've always been there for you." That last part hit me like a slap. A good mother? Always been there for me? I almost laughed. This wasn't just about legal trouble. This was about rewriting history, about her using me as a shield to save herself. And in that moment, I knew, she had no idea the storm she just unleashed. I just stared at her, stunned, while she sat there waiting for my answer like this was some normal mother-daughter favor. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "You want me to lie in court for you?" I asked slowly. She flinched, but recovered quick. "It's not lying, Olivia. It's emphasizing the good parts. The judge just needs to see I'm a decent person. If you say I was a good mom, it'll help my case." A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "A good mom? You left me with Grandma when I was 8 years old. You barely called. You didn't come to my graduation. You didn't even send me a birthday card most years. And now you want me to go in front of a judge and pretend you were Mother of the Year? Her eyes hardened, the fake sweetness cracking. You don't understand. If Daniel goes down, I go down too. We could lose everything. There it was, we. Not me and her. Not her and me trying to reconnect. It was her and Daniel. Her real family. I was just a tool. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head. I was angry, yes, but underneath that anger was something sharper, something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Revenge. She thought she could use me to save herself. But what if I flipped the script? What if I let her believe I was on her side, then tore her perfect little world apart the way she once tore mine? I pulled out my old journals, the ones I kept as a teenager. Every entry was filled with her absence, missed birthdays, empty holidays, my pain written in messy handwriting. It hit me then, I had evidence of who she really was. Maybe not evidence that could send her to jail, but evidence that could ruin the image she was trying so hard to protect. I wasn't just going to refuse her. I was going to make sure everyone saw the truth about the good mother she claimed to be. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. I agreed to meet with her again the following week, but this time, I was prepared. I wasn't going to explode with anger or storm out. I needed to be patient, calculating. If she wanted to play pretend, then I'd play along. Only difference was, I'd be keeping score. When I showed up at her house, she was dressed like she was about to go to church, pearls, a pastel dress, hair neatly pinned. "Olivia," she said with that forced smile, "I'm so glad you came. I've been telling Daniel how proud I am of you." I wanted to gag, but I just smiled back. "That's nice of you." Daniel walked in then. Broad-shouldered, graying, with a fake politeness that made my skin crawl. He shook my hand like we were meeting for the first time, even though I remembered him from when I was a kid. He was the reason I lost my mom, whether he admitted it or not. "We're grateful you're willing to help," he said smoothly. "Family should stick together." Family. The word burned in my ears. I nodded, biting back my anger. Of course. I just need to understand everything before I agree to anything. That night, I listened carefully as they laid out their version of the story. Daniel's former partners were accusing him of fraud, claiming my mom signed off on fake contracts. She swore she knew nothing about it. "But if the court believes them, it'll ruin us," she said dramatically. "And then, the pitch, if you testify that I've always been a good, stable mother, it will show the judge that I'm not the kind of person who'd be involved in something like this." I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. Inside, though, my mind was already racing. This wasn't just about protecting herself. She wanted me to erase the truth of my entire childhood with one lie. She wanted me to validate the fantasy life she built after throwing me away. Fine. She wanted me in her world. I'd step into it. But I wasn't going to save her, I was going to expose her. That night, when I got home, I pulled out my journals again. Then I started digging deeper, old photos, letters, even Grandma's testimony if it came to it. My mother wanted a performance in court, and she was going to get one. Only, it wouldn't be the one she expected. The first person I went to was Grandma. She'd always been my anchor, and if anyone could help me untangle this, it was her. I drove to her house on a humid Saturday afternoon. She was on the porch in her rocking chair, sipping iced tea. When I told her everything, how Mom wanted me to testify, how she wanted me to pretend she'd always been there, Grandma's jaw tightened. "That woman has some nerve," she muttered. "Olivia, you owe her nothing. Not after what she did." "I know," I said. "But I think I can use this. I don't just want to say no, I want to make her face the truth. And if she's in legal trouble, maybe I can do more than that." Grandma was quiet for a long moment, then finally said, "If that's the road you want to walk, I'll stand with you." That was all I needed. We went through old boxes in her attic. I found birthday invitations my mom never showed up for, school photos she never ordered, even a Christmas card I wrote her when I was 12 that was returned unopened. Piece by piece, the picture formed, a mother who abandoned her child for a new life. But I wanted more than my side of the story. I needed to know exactly what she was hiding now. That night, I created a new email account and sent her a message posing as a concerned business contact. I hinted that I had documents that could make her case worse and asked if she'd be willing to negotiate to keep things quiet. It was risky, but I knew her type. She'd take the bait. And she did. The very next day, she responded nervously, asking who I was and what I wanted. That was when I realized something. Whatever Daniel had dragged her into, she was knee-deep in it. She wasn't just an innocent bystander. And if I played my cards right, I could expose her lies, both as a mother and as a so-called victim. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. After my little email stunt worked, I knew I had leverage. My mom's panicked reply told me everything. She wasn't just scared of Daniel going down, she was terrified of being exposed herself. If I wanted real revenge, I had to understand exactly what Daniel was hiding. So I started digging. At first, I searched online, local news archives, court documents, old business articles. His construction company had a shiny website with pictures of smiling workers and happy families in front of newly built homes, but if you went past the surface, the rot showed. I found records of lawsuits from subcontractors who claimed they weren't paid. Permits filed under shell companies. And then, something bigger, a federal investigation into bid rigging. It looked like it had fizzled out years ago, but I could see the pattern. Daniel cut corners and made enemies. Lots of them. I needed more. That's when I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my old high school friend, Hannah. She worked as a paralegal downtown. We met for coffee, and I laid out the basics without giving away my whole plan. I need help digging into a company's records. Think you can get me copies of any active lawsuits or filings? Hannah raised an eyebrow. This about your mom? I hesitated, then nodded. She didn't press further, just leaned in and said, "Give me the name. I'll see what I can do." A week later, she texted me, "Got something. Call me." When we met again, she slid a folder across the table. Daniel's company is under quiet review. Whistleblower claims. Fraud, tax evasion, even laundering through property deals. Your mom's name comes up more than once. She signed papers linking her to the company's finances. My pulse quickened. I wasn't just imagining it. She was involved. Hannah gave me a serious look. "Liv, this is dangerous territory. You sure you want to get in the middle of this?" I stared at the papers, my hands tightening around the folder. I'm not in the middle. I'm right where I want to be. Because now, I had proof. And soon, everyone would know exactly what kind of mother she really was. The closer the court date got, the more pressure my mom put on me. She'd call me daily, leaving voicemails about how much she needed me, how family sticks together. Every message made my blood boil, but I kept playing along, telling her I was thinking about it. What she didn't know was that I was already laying the groundwork for her downfall. With Hannah's help, I organized the documents we found, lawsuits, contracts, her signatures, even one where she personally guaranteed a fraudulent deal. I also gathered the personal side, my journals, grandma's testimony, old photos, the unopened Christmas card. My mom wanted the court to believe she was this perfect, loving mother. Fine. I'd show the judge the truth. I knew I had to be careful, though. If I came at her too strong, she'd find a way to twist it back on me. So I decided on a different approach, let her believe I was on her side until the very last moment. One evening, we met at her house again. She poured me wine like we were friends, not mother and daughter with years of betrayal between us. "Olivia," she said softly, "I can't tell you how much this means to me. You standing by me, it proves we're finally healing. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I'll be there." Her relief was almost pathetic. She actually teared up, hugging me tightly. For a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered every lonely night I cried myself to sleep while she played happy family somewhere else. As I drove home, I rehearsed what I'd say on the stand. She thought I was going to tell the court she'd always been there for me. Instead, I was going to tell the truth, the ugly, raw truth. And when the trial came, I was ready. The morning of, I wore a plain black dress. Grandma squeezed my hand before I walked into the courthouse. "You do what you need to do, Liv," she whispered. I nodded, my heart pounding. This was it. Years of silence, years of pretending, it all ended today. My mom sat at the defendant's table, smiling at me like we were allies. She had no idea the knife I was about to twist. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. The air was heavy with that mix of wood polish and nerves that clung to every trial. My mom sat next to Daniel, her pearl necklace gleaming under the harsh lights. She looked calm, almost smug, like she already knew she'd walk away clean. When they called my name, I walked to the witness stand with my heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I swore to tell the truth, sat down, and forced myself to meet my mother's eyes. She gave me the faintest nod, her silent signal, "Remember what you promised." The opposing attorney began. "Olivia, can you describe your relationship with your mother?" I took a deep breath. This was it. "Complicated," I said slowly. "To be honest, for most of my life, my mother wasn't there at all. I saw her flinch in the corner of my eye, but I kept going. When I was 8, she left me with my grandmother and moved in with Daniel and his kids. After that, I rarely saw her. Birthdays, school plays, graduations, she wasn't there. I grew up feeling abandoned." The room went quiet. Even the judge leaned in slightly. The attorney asked, "So, would you say your mother provided a stable, supportive home for you?" I didn't hesitate. "No. My grandmother did. My mom chose her new family over me." The gasp that rippled through the room was subtle, but I felt it. My mom's face drained of color, and Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Then came the kicker. I pulled out the folder I'd brought, sliding it across the table to the attorney. "These are journals, photos, and letters from my childhood. They show my mother's absence, in her own handwriting, in mine, and in the unopened letters she ignored. They tell the real story." The judge allowed it into evidence. My mom turned toward me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I could see her lips form the word "why." I didn't answer. Because this wasn't about her anymore, it was about me finally being heard. And as I stepped down from the stand, I knew there was no going back. The silence after my testimony was deafening. My mom sat frozen, her jaw tight, her eyes darting between me and the judge. Daniel leaned in to whisper something in her ear, but she didn't respond. For the first time, she looked rattled, like the mask she'd been wearing for years was starting to crack. The prosecutor wasted no time using my testimony as leverage. They painted her as someone who not only participated in shady business dealings but also had a history of abandoning responsibility in her personal life. My words had given them exactly what they needed, a human example of her selfishness. When court adjourned that day, my mom cornered me in the hallway. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You promised me, Olivia." I pulled my arm back. "No, Mom. You promised me a childhood. You promised to be there. And you broke it." I just told the truth. Her face twisted with rage, but beneath it, I saw something else, fear. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. That night, Daniel tried to call me. I didn't answer. Instead, I saved his number under the name Liar and let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, his voice was smooth but threatening. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Olivia. Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." I should have been scared, but I wasn't. If anything, it fueled me. They thought they could intimidate me into silence. They were wrong. The next morning, Hannah texted me, "Check the news." There it was, an article about Daniel's company under federal investigation, naming both him and my mom. The story was spreading, and thanks to my testimony, her good mother act was unraveling in front of everyone. For once, I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one pulling the strings. And I wasn't done yet. The article spread faster than I expected. By the next day, it was being shared on local news sites and even made its way to a regional paper. The headline read, "Construction Scandal Deepens, Family Ties Raise New Questions." And there, tucked in the middle of the piece, was a summary of my testimony. I hadn't used the media before, but now I realized it could be the most powerful weapon in my arsenal. My mom cared more about appearances than anything else, her spotless reputation, her polished image as a devoted wife and mother. And I had just given the world a glimpse of the truth. Reporters started showing up outside the courthouse. The first time one approached me, sticking a microphone in my face, I froze. Then I remembered all those nights as a kid, waiting for a mom who never showed up, and the words spilled out. "I grew up without her," I said firmly. "She abandoned me when I was 8. She chose her new family over me, and now she wants to pretend the past never happened. But I won't let her rewrite history." That soundbite made the evening news. The next day, social media lit up. Some people called me brave. Others accused me of being vindictive. But the most important thing was this: no one was buying her good mother act anymore. Grandma called me that night. "I'm proud of you, Liv," she said softly. "You're finally speaking your truth. She can't hide behind lies forever." I smiled, but part of me was restless. I didn't just want to speak my truth, I wanted to strip her of everything she built on my pain. So, I started working with Hannah to leak more documents to a local journalist who was hungry for the story. Fraudulent contracts, shady payments, emails with my mom's name attached, they all started trickling into the press. Each article chipped away at her carefully crafted image. By the time the trial hit its second week, the courtroom was packed with reporters. And my mom? She looked smaller every day, her perfect hair limp, her fake smile gone. For once, she was the one living under the weight of shame. And I was just getting started. By the end of the second week of trial, the pressure on my mom was unbearable. She couldn't walk into the courthouse without cameras flashing in her face. Headlines branded her as the fraudster's wife, the woman who abandoned her child, the enabler. Everything she tried to bury for years was now front-page news. I should have felt satisfied, but I wanted something more personal. A confrontation. She had hidden behind lies for so long, and I wanted to strip them away face to face. So when she called me late one night, her voice cracking, asking to meet, I agreed. We met at a quiet diner just off the highway, the kind that smelled of burnt coffee and frying oil. She slid into the booth across from me, wearing no makeup for the first time I could remember. "Olivia," she started, her voice trembling, "why are you doing this to me?" I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "No, Mom. The question is, why did you do this to me? Why did you leave me? Why did you come back only when you needed something?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I had waited my whole life for this moment. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I had to make choices. Daniel, he promised me security. I couldn't raise you on my own. I thought you'd be better off with your grandmother." I shook my head. "You didn't leave me for my sake. You left me for yourself. Don't twist it." She reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away. "I'm sorry," she said desperately. "I know I hurt you. But can't we just move on? Can't you forgive me?" I stared at her, my chest tight. Forgiveness. The word tasted bitter. She wanted me to erase 16 years of abandonment with one gesture, just like she wanted me to erase it all in court. Finally, I said, you don't get to ask me for forgiveness. Not while you're still lying to yourself. Not while you're still clinging to that fantasy of being a good mom. You weren't. And now the world knows it. Her face crumpled, but I didn't look away. For once, she was the one left powerless. I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and said, this is the last time we meet on your terms. As I walked out of the diner into the cool night air, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the abandoned daughter, I was the one in control. And the final blow was still to come. The trial dragged into its final week, and by then, my mom looked nothing like the polished woman who first showed up at my door. Her hair was dull, her shoulders slumped, and her eyes had that frantic, cornered look. Daniel sat beside her, stiff as stone, but even he couldn't hide the cracks forming. I knew the jury already had enough to sink them, but I wanted to make sure there was no chance of her slipping away, no loophole she could wriggle through. So, with Hannah's help, I arranged one last reveal. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution introduced new evidence, emails between Daniel and my mom, ones where she directly approved fraudulent contracts. Her name, her words, her complicity, all in black and white. I watched as the color drained from her face. She glanced back at me in the gallery, her eyes wide with betrayal, and in that moment, she knew. She knew I had been the one feeding the prosecution what they needed. The room buzzed as the documents were read aloud. The judge banged his gavel for order, but the damage was done. My mom's carefully constructed facade crumbled in front of everyone. After court adjourned, she caught up to me in the hallway, her voice breaking. Olivia, you did this? I didn't deny it. I just looked her straight in the eye and said, I told the truth. Something you've never been brave enough to do. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. For once, she was speechless. As I walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed me, shouting questions. I gave one statement, you can't build a life on lies without it collapsing. I learned that the hard way as a child. Now it's her turn. The cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face, but all I felt was a strange, peaceful clarity. My revenge wasn't about destroying her, it was about finally making her face the reality she spent years running from. And tomorrow, the verdict would seal her fate. The courtroom was silent when the jury filed back in. My palms were damp, but not from fear. This time, it was anticipation. For years, I had lived in the shadow of my mom's choices. Today, the shadow would finally lift. The foreman stood, holding the slip of paper. On the charges of fraud and conspiracy, we find the defendants guilty. The words hung in the air like a bell ringing. My mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Daniel just closed his eyes, as if he'd been expecting it. The judge announced sentencing would follow in a few weeks, but I barely heard him. All I could focus on was that single word, guilty. It was over. As the courtroom emptied, my mom tried one last time to reach me. She called my name, her voice trembling, broken. I didn't turn back. She had already taken enough of my life. I wasn't going to give her another second. Outside, the sky was bright and warm, like the world itself was starting fresh. Reporters tried to push in, but Grandma stepped in front of me like a shield, guiding me past them. When we finally reached her car, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did it, Liv. You stood up for yourself." And for the first time, I believed her. In the weeks that followed, things started to shift. I slept better. I laughed more. I stopped wondering why I wasn't enough for my mom, because I finally understood, it was never about me. It was about her weakness, her selfishness, her inability to love the way a mother should. I poured my energy into my job, into friendships, into building a life that was truly mine. No more chasing the love I'd never get. No more carrying the weight of her choices. One evening, sitting on Grandma's porch with the cicadas humming and a glass of sweet tea in my hand, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was free. My revenge hadn't just been about bringing her down, it had been about reclaiming myself. And in the end, that was the happiest ending I could have asked for.